Hello everyone. About 600 years before Christ, the prophet Daniel wrote about the rise of a world leader in the end times, one that we often refer to as the Antichrist. And this leader would make an end to the sacrifices and the celebrations in the temple in Jerusalem. Now, when prophet Daniel wrote this, it was during the period of the Babylonian captivity, where the first temple built by King Solomon was destroyed. So his prophecy implies that there would be another temple. And indeed, another temple was built. And this was the temple that stood even in the time of Jesus. And shortly before Jesus was crucified and ascended to heaven, he spoke also about the time of the end of the age and of his return. And he referred to the same prophecy that Daniel spoke about. We can read this in Matthew 24. 30 years after that, this temple, the second temple, was also destroyed. And this prophecy was still not fulfilled. About 25 years later, John wrote the book of Revelation, in which he again describes this event. And we can read it in particular in Revelation chapters 11, 12 and 13. This means that in the last days, during the reign of the Antichrist, there has to be a temple in Jerusalem. Currently, there is a lot going on to make that happen. And this goes mostly below the radar, but there are two articles that I want to quote a few lines from, and of which I will leave the link in the description of this video, that will show you how near we are to this point. Apart from the fact that the actual temple has been designed, the plans are there, the materials are there, but even the furniture, the vessels are ready, the clothing of the priests is ready, the priests themselves are selected and being trained. Since a few years we have also a high priest, and since last year sacrifices are being made, being it of course not in the temple, because the temple itself does not stand there yet. But we can see that there is a movement in that direction. But there is more, and I want to quote: "For the first time in approximately 2,000 years since the time of the Second Temple, plans are being formed by the Israeli government to build an effective infrastructure for Jews to make their obligatory pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem. The Third Temple will require a functional infrastructure that could facilitate the transportation of millions of Jews to Jerusalem during and after these festivals." Israeli Minister of Transportation Yisrael Katz has publicly stated that facilitating this was his intention when planning the line of the fast train currently under construction between the airport in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So the idea or the expectation is that many thousands of people will come from all over the world actually to bring their sacrifices in the temple in Jerusalem, and they will land at the airport in Tel Aviv and have to be transported to Jerusalem. So therefore this railway is under construction, and that's been going on for over a decade, which is called the King David Railway. So it continues then: Katz is planning on extending the line of the fast train to transport people from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem directly to the Western Wall. The final stop will be the Kotel, that is the Western Wall. In a similar vein, Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat has recently announced plans to build a cable car system that will be capable of transporting thousands of people per hour to the area of the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. The Israeli government ministers just recently approved this plan during a cabinet meeting held inside the Western Wall tunnels. All this refers to meetings that happened only in the recent few weeks, even this month of February. It then says a bit further down, many new hotels will need to be built and upgraded. Roads will need to be widened and extended. Utilities will need to be improved and upgraded. And new methods of transportation will need to be implemented. So they really expect thousands upon thousands of people. Actually, the planning is to build new hotels and make sure that there are more than 27,000 extra rooms to facilitate the expected over 50,000 people every day. And so this gives hand and feet to what we read in the Bible, where John writes in the book of Revelation that the outer court of the temple and the city will be trodden by feet of the Gentiles for actually 42 months, 3.5 years. So we see it actually happening before our very eyes. Israel's transport minister is pushing ahead with a controversial plan to extend Jerusalem's soon-to-open high-speed rail line to the Western Wall, where he wants to name a station after the US President Donald Trump. So the idea here is again, or the motivation I should say, that Donald Trump was the one to declare Jerusalem as, or recognize rather, Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And to honor that, the railway station will be named after him, whereas the railroad itself is called King David Railway, which was the first king to establish Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to rule from there. Now, it is my personal belief that this has not come up just now after the recent recognition of Jerusalem as capital, but all this has been talked about long before and has been decided behind closed doors long before. It is known that current President Trump has visited Jerusalem and has had meetings with both officials and with the rabbis years before he was even elected as president. So, final quote here, the plan also envisages a VIP rail car to shuttle visiting heads of state and ministers directly from Ben Gurion Airport to the Trump station near the Western Wall. And in addition also, the plan has been announced to have an extra train next to the passenger trains, an extra train with car boxes to transport the animals that will be used for the sacrifices. So they are very serious about this, and millions upon millions are invested in this. This infrastructure is under construction for over a decade, and you can find easily online many pictures of this. And so we see that what actually Prophet Daniel wrote down over 2,500 years ago, it is happening right now in our time. So once again, this shows how true the Bible is and how near we are to this period that John wrote about, that Jesus spoke about, that Daniel wrote about, and of course other prophets and scriptures where we can find this. Prophecy is being fulfilled. We live in the season of the harvest. So once again, I would like to end by saying, look up, for our redemption draws near.